Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing my first book review for the month of April, and that is on the recently released Whisper Down the Lane. So I got this book in my April 2021 Nightworms package. This was released on April 6th officially, and I believe it's about like 300 pages. Yeah, it's like 300 pages. Really quick, easy read. I read it in like a day and a half. And definitely one of those novels that when I heard it was coming out, I was like really intrigued by it. It's set in both the 1980s as well as like 2013, and kind of revolves around the satanic panic of the 1980s. So I'll just read the insert real quick so y'all know what the basic premise is if you haven't heard of it. But it says, Richard doesn't have a past. For him, there is only the present. A new marriage to Tamara, a first chance at fatherhood to her son Elijah, and a quiet but pleasant life as an art teacher at Elijah's elementary school in Danvers, Virginia. Then the body of a rabbit, ritualistically murdered, appears on the school grounds with a birthday card for Richard tucked beneath it. Richard doesn't have a birthday, but Sean does. Sean is a 5-year-old boy who has just moved to Greenfield, Virginia with his mother. Like most mothers of the 1980s, she's worried about bills, childcare, putting food on the table, and an encroaching threat to American life that can take the face of anyone, a politician, friendly neighbor, or even a teacher. When Sean's school sends a letter to parents revealing that Sean's favorite teacher is under investigation, a white lie from Sean lights a fire that engulfs the entire nation, and Sean and his mother are left holding the match. Now, 30 years later, someone is here to remind Richard that they remember what Sean did. And though Sean doesn't exist anymore, someone needs to pay the price for his lies. So I think it's a really, really good summary of what this book is. I also do think that the opening line of this book is extremely powerful. And the first line of this book is, they found Professor Howdy spread across the soccer field. What was left of him anyway? And I really like that, and you'll see as you read the book, you'll find out really quickly in the first like 2 pages of this book that line is very misleading. And I feel like that's what a lot of this book is about. And I really enjoyed when I opened this book and that was the first line, and what it ended up revealing over the first couple pages was basically almost like a microcosm of what happens throughout this entire book. This book for me, and I'm going to try and make this as spoiler-free as possible, was a 4-star read for me. I really enjoyed this book. It wasn't what I was expecting when I first got it, but I did really enjoy it. Would I call it a horror? Not really. It's more of like a crime drama. I wouldn't really call it like a crime thriller at all. I don't think it is like a detective whodunit kind of story. There's definitely elements of that, but it's definitely more a look at like the psychology of children put in difficult situations and what happens when they grow up. So I think the best way to talk about this book is it's definitely alluding to a lot of trials that have been about people who are either wrongfully convicted or convicted out of selfish reasons from the accuser. So I think if you have any knowledge of the West Memphis 3 case or are interested in that case, this is a really, really good book to read. It is not at all a retelling of the West Memphis 3 case, but it does pull a bunch of the issues that came from that case and really, really highlight them. The same with the Salem witch trials in, what was that, like the 1640s, I want to say. If you know like the background to the Salem witch trials, apart from, you know, like people were being accused of witchcraft and, you know, stoned to death or pressed to death, I think if you actually go and learn about the Salem witch trials, you see a lot of what happened in the Salem witch trials in this book as well. Again, for different reasons though. But I really, really enjoyed this novel. It does bank very heavily on the reader knowing about the satanic panic of the 1980s and 90s. I went into this book thinking that there were going to be more, I thought that there was going to be more of like an occult angle in this. I thought it'd be really interesting to take the satanic panic and the hysteria and then kind of amp it up to like, you know, actually being about like Satanism and occultism and that whole thing. It's definitely not. It is definitely more rooted on like the actual like satanic panic itself versus like the occultism that is around it. So that is just something to know, because I did think it could have taken more of the occultist approach. It didn't. That's okay. It didn't make the book any less enjoyable for me. I just didn't expect it to take the turn that it did. And as I said, the scariest, like, this book isn't really a horror story, but I will say that there are things that you read in this book that are very upsetting and disturbing, and I would say that the scariest part of this book is kind of what happens to all of the 5-year-old characters. There's a tremendous amount of 5-year-olds in this book, in both like the 1980 section and the 2013 section, and pretty much none of them have what I would consider like good childhoods. Sean, being our main character, is put through a lot of stress and turmoil and really tough situations and a lot of pressure that no 5-year-old should go through, especially when he doesn't actually understand what's happening. And I think watching adults taking advantage of a child the way that they do in this book is it's very upsetting, especially when you know that this has happened in cases before. I think the most effective part of this book is they do transcriptions of interviews between children and a psychiatrist, and other characters getting interrogated by the police. And I think watching side-by-side interrogation and psychiatric interviews basically paralleled together is really, really effective in this book. And I think it really makes a point that Clay McLeod Chapman is trying to drive home with this novel. It is definitely very jarring to read, and it's very upsetting, and it actually stressed me out a lot reading it, but therefore it is very, very effective. So yeah, I'd say a lot of the horror in this book is definitely the exploitation and manipulation of children, and how almost easy they make it seem in this book. And it happens over and over and over. It's the continued trend throughout this book. Everything kind of becomes like a vicious cycle. So it's definitely the scariest part of this book. There were definitely a few downsides to this. There's one main character named Tamara, I think it's Tamara, who I just found to be one of the weaker characters in the novel. I found her slightly unrealistic, a little too cliche, and just kind of annoying overall, but she wasn't a pivotal character. Like, she is a main character, but like not one that like I have to be invested in to get through the story. So beyond her, I really enjoyed everything else and all of the other characters. And then we get to the ending. And I don't want to spoil the ending, because the ending I thought was, it came a little out of nowhere, just a little bit. Like, it made sense being in there, but it was very, very jarring and kind of left this overarching feeling of dread with me, because it did answer the questions that I had, but it also kind of glossed over them. And after I finished the book, I kind of sat and was like, oh, that's very disturbing. And there's two major twists in the ending that are revealed through a letter at the very, very end. And the big reveal through the letter, it makes sense. It ties the stories together. It explains why certain things are happening. And then there's kind of like a lesser reveal about another character, another sort of like mid-level character, I would say, and the actions that he did. And they just kind of gloss over it, like, oh yeah, like that happened. And when I closed the book, I was like, oh, interesting. And then I started thinking about what that meant, and I was like, oh my God. Like, this is terrifying. And I really don't want to, like, ruin it for anybody, but just know that, like, the ending of this book, I don't know if it nails it. I don't know if it sticks the landing, because it's, like, fine. It kind of wraps everything up. It makes sense. But then afterwards, it, like, lingers with you. Like, there's this really disturbing element that lingers with you. And I was like, okay, I see what happened there. And it just kind of carries over the whole tone of the book. It really solidifies, I guess, what the point of the book was. And it's really, really disturbing, but it's so subtle that like when I first read it, like I kind of almost missed it. I glossed over it, and then I had to sit and think about it and be like, oh, okay, so that's what happened. And then it ends. So like this final reveal is kind of left, the two final reveals are kind of left unresolved because like you know about them, and then it's just kind of like, okay, over. But yeah, no, there's this weird like lingering kind of icky feeling that you get at the end, and I thought it was really effective, and I really liked it for that. So yes, overall, Whisper Down the Lane. I highly recommend this book. This is not a 5-star read. This doesn't blow you away and keep you on the edge of your seat. And it's not like a crime thriller, but it is very much like a psychological drama rooted in very scary topics. Not a scary book, but has some really disturbing imagery and situations in it. And I really liked it. I thought this was a great introduction to Clay McLeod Chapman. I'm very pleased with this book. Could it have been a little better? Yes. Could it have been polished a little bit more? Absolutely. But overall, super, super, super solid read. Really stoked that I read it. Again, I read it in like a day and a half. Like, this is a breeze to get through, and the whole time you're reading it, you just want to know what's happening. You know, and again, that first sentence, the first couple pages really give you like an insight of what's going to be the theme throughout this whole novel, and I just absolutely adored that happened. Very well crafted, very well laid out. Even though there's time jumps in it from the 80s and into like 2013, you don't get confused or anything. It really walks seamlessly. So I really, really enjoyed this book. I think if you're thinking about picking it up, definitely get it. But no, it's going to be a little different than it seems on paper. There's not going to be a lot of occultism in it. There's nothing really supernatural. It is just straight up taking the satanic panic of the 80s and highlighting a lot of the flaws that came out of it. So yeah, that is all that I have for you guys today. As always, if you enjoy my videos, please hit the like and subscribe buttons down below. Leave a comment if there are any new books that you guys think I should check out and review on my channel. And as always, I post every Monday and Thursday, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Bye.